Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to the Jacksonville Water and Sewer Advisory Committee meeting, August 11th, 2022. We don't quite have enough for a quorum tonight, so we're going to jump right into it. Wally, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have a quorum tonight, so we can't take any actions. So at your next meeting, what we'll need to do is hold elections for the upcoming year. And then we'll also approve the minutes at that meeting from our last meeting. So you have those attached, so you have plenty of time to review them. But with that, we do have two items that we'd like to discuss with you this evening. They are discussion. We're not really asking for any action. They're both projects that are in your current capital improvement plan. This is more of an informational session to tell you where we're at on those projects, because I know that there's been a lot of interest and a lot of interest from the community. So we'll give you an update on those and then answer any questions you have, and we can adjourn for the evening. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Nick, and he's going to walk you through the first one.
Thank you, Wally. You guys are probably aware of the Brookview Drive sewer line issue. It was causing the road to have sinkholes to start to appear. Since we last reported on this project, we bid the job out, and we have awarded the contract to Carolina Utilities of Jacksonville in the amount of just under $382,000. The job is well underway, and the contract includes replacing 8 manholes and approximately 1,100 linear feet of sewer main. Once the work is done, we intend to pave those utility cuts. And one thing that I would like to note as well, we're also replacing the sewer services along that area as well, so we don't have to go back under the road anytime soon. Just want to share with you, when the project started, this was what we had. The steel plate has covered up a sinkhole. Sinkhole formed when the soil began to enter the sewer line. Over time, eventually the ground caved in and the sinkhole appeared. A little bit further down the road there, you can see another sinkhole was starting. Since then, these particular areas have been dug up, replaced, and backfilled, so all of this is gone. Starting the job, we knew we would have a few challenges to consider. One of which is we always have to maintain emergency vehicle and personnel access to the road, the area, and the houses in that area. Generally, we also like to allow one lane of road to remain open at all times. With this type of project, the sewer line was in the middle of the road. Some of the excavations were 10 feet or deeper. We knew that it wasn't feasible to allow access to all the have one lane open all the time, but we did have to allow access to the driveways at all times. Again, another safety concern is we knew we would encounter deep excavations. And anytime you go underground, we know we're going to have unknown conditions that we won't realize until we start to dig. We also knew that we had existing utilities that were quite old, and we wanted to be careful to ensure we didn't damage or have to replace those during the project. The picture you're looking at, this is Carolina Utilities working in a safe excavation. I'll point out their men are wearing PPE. They have a trench box properly in place. As you can see from the exposed side, they've benched the soil back to prevent a potential cave-in. And one other thing I'll point out is they have a ladder behind them, which is required to remain there at all times when men are in the hole to allow for quick escape from the hole should there be an issue. One other picture of their men working. The blue pipe that's partially covered up is your main. The 4-inch white PVC running perpendicular to that would be a service to a house. This man is in a safe excavation. This was about 4 foot deep, which would not require benching, but as you can see with the sandy soil, they chose to slope it anyways. And an interesting point of that picture is about his knee height towards the right, you can see the old sewer pipe, which is made out of terracotta, which gives you an idea how old it is. Project status, we're approximately 75% complete with the job. As we're going along, we're finding that it's near impossible not to disturb the water services. The water line is very close to the sewer line, which was not what we had expected per our as-bills. So as we move along, the services are literally just falling out of the main. So we're replacing the water services to the house as we go. Also, where necessary, we're backfilling with good fill material to ensure we have proper compaction. And then as we finish, we intend to repave the road only where the utility cuts were made. Unforeseen challenges that happened during the project was as I mentioned a moment ago, the water line, the water main is much closer to the sewer line than we expected. And the water main is very old, it's very brittle. And we've had some situations where we have cracked it. We've had to make repairs as we go. As I mentioned earlier, we are replacing all the water services as we go. We're finding abandoned water services that need to be removed and plugged off permanently. A problem this creates is when we backfill, the last several feet of backfill are very important to ensure we have proper compaction underneath our road before we pave. In this situation, along nearly the entire run of sewer line that's being replaced, the water line is either on top of or very close to the sewer line. It's making it very difficult for us to reach a proper compaction before we pave that road.
When you say on top, you just mean physical location. There is vertical separation.
Yes, sir. I'll clarify that. The water line's only about 2 to 3 feet in the ground, while our sewer line is generally 10 feet in the ground.
But the state still says that there should be 10 feet horizontal separation, even with the vertical separation.
So is that what you're having to do, is make it 10 foot now?
So that's what the goal will be, yes, sir.
Part of what we found out in doing this is we need to look at and secure funding to rework some of that water line, which is our last comment would be we'll require an engineer to design that system, and it will also require state approval.
So the challenge there is it's going to take us some time, so we've got to get an engineer to draw it up. And on top of that, as Nick mentioned, we were at $382,000 on the project. We only have $400,000, so we're going to be over budget most likely because of this. So that'll take a little bit of time. We will have to go back to council and do a budget amendment to move money into that project.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of my questions, is when you encounter these challenges and you've budgeted so much after you analyze everything, who pays for the extra? I'm sure you have a buffer in there somewhere, right?
We
Not
do.
Not to that extent.
That's right, and that's we expect things like having to replace services or additional sewer main, like on Sioux and Seminole. When we did this, we actually had to chase good pipe to tie into it, so that extends the cost of the project above, because when we scoped the project, we said we're going to this point. Well, if you can't tie in at that point, you got to go further. I think we chased it about 75 or 100 feet further than we were expecting, but we had available money in that. Part of the challenge with funding of projects that we have right now is that the material is so volatile. The price is exorbitant, and on top of that, there's long lead times and it's hard to get. So, when people are bidding projects, those are challenges we're running into. So, where this project was funded right at the end of last year, the expected, we came within budget, but what came in was still slightly higher than kind of what we were expecting, which means that we have less for unforeseen circumstances. So we'll have to go back for this one and ask for money, because we didn't plan on having to we'll have to hire an external engineer, so that'll be a consultant fee. So you're at minimum $5,000 there. And of course, they've got to get us through the state permitting. And then on top of that, I think the estimate we had for the water line replacement was a little over $40,000. So at $382,000, we're above our $400,000 that we have available. So we will be going back to council to, to ask for money to finish the project.
My memory serves me correct. You guys have really been doing a pretty good job the last couple of years not having to tap into that money.
That's
Is that
correct.
So that's why they have money available for
There's
what
There's
you're
certainly
saying.
plenty of money available to do it, but we still do our best to try to keep projects within budget. So in the project that Randa's getting ready to talk to you about, we'll have some of these same concerns because we're not even 100% sure that we understand all of the challenges we're about to face. But we'll get to that one in a minute. Now, I know Nick's still got a couple of things left on this one.
Let's see. So our next step in this project, we're also going to finish the contract we have. We're going to backfill it and pave it. Again, only pave the areas where the utility cuts were made. Once that's done, we're going to begin to try to secure funding to go ahead and replace that water line. When we replace the water line, we're also going to relocate it in order to try to be within state requirements of that separation, horizontal separation. And we will patch those areas. We intend to line the remaining sewer line on Brookview. And when all that is done, we will mill, and then we will repave all of Brookview.
All of the circle portion of Brookview. Because Brookview does go across Decatur.
Right.
So this would be from the intersection of Brookview and Decatur around the horseshoe to Brookview and Decatur.
Right. Having heard what you said about how close the water line is that not gonna still be kind of an issue with the rest of the area, Decatur and all the rest of them? Were you surprised how brittle the water line is?
I think we expected the utility to be in the condition it was. What we didn't expect was to encounter it where we did. So had it have been where it was plotted some 40 years ago, I would assume, then we probably would have been all right.
Then my question is, if it's there, is this something that you possibly could look at down the road in another section because all this is brittle, caving in? I mean, it's a hypothetical, I know, but.
Well, what we find with the water is typically, as long as you keep pressure on it and you don't disturb it, it does fairly well. It's when you start disturbing around it that really causes the problems. And unfortunately, we do our best to, I'll say as a city staff, one thing that I truly despise is when we repave a road and within 3 days a water leak pops up. And it happens more frequently than you would think. And the problem is that water, people say, well, why didn't you replace it while you were there? Well, while we were there wasn't a problem.
Right.
But what happened, and you could say, well, maybe we should look at replacing the water line before we pave. But you're talking 1,170 feet. Now it's sewer, so it's more expensive. For $380,000, we can't afford to replace all the water line before we pave. So what we do is we try to pay very close attention to where we've had patches and or where we know the water line is shallow. And be very careful, but a great example is Nick was in charge of a project that repaved the road going in, Maple. I wanted to say Mill, I knew that was wrong. Maple Street. We repaved Maple Street almost the entire length from River to Decatur. And we had one section where immediately following us completing the paving work, the water line began leaking and actually buckled the brand new pavement. So we had to come in, cut it out, and now there's a fairly substantial patch there. I'm assuming, I can't prove, but our expectation is that water line was fine when we milled the road. and it was fine when we started paving, but when you pave, you have to roll the pavement, and most of the time there's a vibratory requirement to get the appropriate density, and I have a feeling it probably shook something loose that we couldn't have foreseen. So then we come back and fix it. So to answer your question, if we hadn't disturbed the area around the water line, we probably could have left it in place. But being that literally we're working right underneath of it, they kind of, so I didn't see it, but I assume they supported it and held it in place while they were doing the work, or left enough soil around it to support it in place. But the problem is when you go to compact it, you're going to break it. That's going to be the problem. And to comply with regulation, we need to go ahead and get that separation since we've got it exposed. Now, what I can say is, a lot of that area was developed around the same time. So you're talking the same materials of construction for water and sewer in that area. But, sometimes, it's hard to say what causes it. Sometimes, there could have been a problem with installation in the beginning, or they chip something or crack something that develops, or something just fails over time. But generally, if we're not having to go into it and it's in good shape, we can pave over top of it.
I guess, then what would cause the sinkhole? Do
So
you have any idea for that?
the one, and I think Nick looked at the camera work for this one, so he may can answer what caused this one.
At some point, that sewer line developed a leak, whether it was at a joint. Somehow, again, it's terracotta. It could have collapsed. When that happened, the soil slowly starts to trickle in. 5 years later, you've got this humongous sinkhole in the middle of your road.
Well, that makes sense.
The other thing about terracotta is when they used to put sewer taps into terracotta, they actually called them break-in taps because they broke them in with a hammer. So you're hitting a clay pipe with a hammer to break the top of it to get the service into it. So you can also end up with fractures and cracks and extensions of that break-in tap over time.
Well, is that what you're gonna line, the terracotta?
Terracotta, yes, sir. So the areas
Is that not a
were,
concern with it being so fragile, shoving that stuff through there?
it actually goes in like a wet sock. And then,
Yeah, you did say that.
yeah, it goes in like a wet sock and it rolls out down the pipe. And then they use steam or hot water to cure it, and it cures like fiberglass. So it's almost like a pipe within a pipe.
Okay.
But the areas that we're replacing, after Nick and some of our staff reviewed it, they couldn't, they determined that there was no way to line that portion. So whatever the defect was in that area, it was just so bad you have to replace it.
Thank you.
And that would conclude my report on Brookview. Are there any other questions I could answer for you?
No, sir, thank you. Appreciate you updating us on it.
I will say that I think we owe the residents of Brookview at least, if nothing else, at least acknowledgement, because they've been very patient in working with the city, because the patch or the steel plate, it's not even really a patch, but the steel plate, the rocks and the cones that Nick showed were there for a year. That's
Wow.
not typically what we want to see. It's just the cost of that project and being able to get everything lined up so that we could get this done. It just unfortunately took us time. So we do owe, the residents of that street have been very patient, so we appreciate that.
Okay, all right, so the next thing I know, it shows on the agenda Dewitt, but it really falls under the FY23 infrastructure rehab project. This is a new program we started this year. It'll occur every 3 years. It's an ongoing program. And it kind of falls into what we just discussed perfectly, actually. So we're gonna focus on the existing failing infrastructures around around the city. We're gonna look whether or not we need to do remove and replace or some sort of repair like the cured in place pipe or something like that. The whole point of that is to reduce the inflow and infiltration. Like if you have separated joints, that's where you'll get those sinkholes and all that, because not only is it going into the pipe, but it's separating around, losing that ground, and that's where we see those sinkholes. This kind of came about because of road work. We go in there, we repair, and then we have an issue right after. I mean, that's not good. A good way to spend our money or our staff's time who are out there doing these repairs constantly. So this is a way for us to try to save time and money. So we go in there, make those repairs to whatever water sewer lines we have, and then we'll go back and repave those streets. Let's see. So we have Dewitt and North Bayshore on this year, the FY23. This picture here is Dewitt. If you've been down it recently, it's the majority of it looks like this, where there's very large sinkholes. You can actually see a little bit further down in this picture. There's more that haven't been repaired, but you can see all the repairs that have already been made. There's numerous sinkholes, and this is one of the other bigger ones that we see, but you see a lot of them along there. The videos we have, they're showing the offset and separated joints, but we have significant cracks on almost all the pipes we've cameraed. So that creates a lot of infiltration, especially though there's a section just above, I think it's, I can't remember, North Shore. Is that right after you leave Henderson, I think? But there's a joint there with significant separation. So there's a couple areas that I have no doubt we'd have to probably remove and replace. There's some other areas looking at it, there are cracks. Those could be lined, it just depends. So.
Before you leave that one, can we go back?
Yep.
Go back one more. So DeWitt is probably one of the worst graded streets we have in the city, especially for the traffic volume that we have on it. And it's been on our street rehab list for a while. Obviously you can see the challenges that we have there. The real challenge is it doesn't do us any good to go in and repave a street without fixing the underlying problem. And it's pretty obvious what the underlying problem is the sewer line. So we're working on getting everything pulled together so that we can move forward. What I'll say, and I don't remember this being in there, but for this project we have right at $1 million. Given the cost of Brookview, I can honestly say I don't know if $1 million is enough. So that's something that after Randa and Nick and our utilities maintenance staff are done reviewing all of the camera work, and when we say camera work, we video the inside of the sewer lines and inspect them, and we decide how much actually has to be replaced, how much we can actually line. Then we will move forward with the sewer and water work that has to be done before we ever talk about coming back to repave it.
Do you have any, vague idea of when that could possibly happen in case somebody lives on DeWitt and watching, saying, when are we going to inspect this?
I know that this is a high priority for the engineering staff in trying to decide what to do. The information gathering and inspection of all the lines and analyzing of the data does take time, because you send somebody out there to camera it, and they do camera it and note things, but then you have people that come back and pull out specific areas and say, well, we need to go pay more attention to this. So they go back through the information and then they have to decide, all right, can this be, is it a crack that can be lined, or is it an offset or broken joint that just has to be completely replaced? And if it does have to be replaced, how far do we think we can go to tie it in? So short answer is it won't be next week. But we are working diligently on it.
The reason for my question is, I'm sure everybody is asking, especially y'all,
Absolutely.
when's this gonna happen?
Priority.
And it's just good that the public understands this is why,
Yes.
to hear the reason why it's taking you this long to do it. So I think it's a good answer for them to hear. Thank you.
I agree.
Well, even like those who are on Dewitt, I've been out there, I think 3 times this week and a couple times last week. It's mostly because I have the reports right now that our lines maintenance people have given me. I'm looking at it, but I'm also driving those roads and trying to look, okay, where do we need to focus? Because it is the majority of Dewitt. And there are certain sections where I have no doubt that needs to be where we start. And then there's other sections you're just not sure where those sinkholes are coming from. So I try to make notes and go back to review, because to watch the videos, I mean, some of the videos are quite a long time, so you try to pick and choose the ones you're gonna watch, and then the other ones you go off of the reports that are provided. But no, we're working on it. I'm trying to get it done.
That's all they need to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, and for, to add to that, the other piece is, as she's doing that, she's also trying to, spend our dollar as wisely as possible. Because the numbers that Nick gave you for Brookview were roughly, $330 a foot, give or take, I think, if I do that math. Could be a little bit off, but it's, if we have to replace it and it's $330 a foot, or we can line it for $200 a foot, we want to line everything we can possibly line and only replace what we have to. So some of this is, but there again, we don't want to cause a problem that we have to come back to later either. So we don't want to take the chance that we line something we really should have replaced.
Right.
Or cause ongoing, what can happen is if you try to line an offset joint or something like that, you actually create a place where things hang up in the line, and now you create an ongoing maintenance problem that utility maintenance has to come out and clear weekly in order to prevent, backups and sanitary sewer overflows. So we're trying to make the best decisions possible based on the information we have, but again, spend our dollar as wisely as possible.
Thank you.
One of the other streets we have on here is North Bayshore. Really, there's only 2 segments. I can see further down, there's more, but the 2 segments are what are creating the biggest issue for our staff. They're out there, even when they try to camera it, they couldn't. So I have no doubt that this one will be a remove and replace. I don't see that we'd be able to do, unless we can get a camera in there to see what's creating the issue, but I have a feeling that's what it's going to be. They're out there constantly. I talked with TJ yesterday about it, and he said, it's just a lot of work for them out there.
And for those that are wondering where North Bayshore is, it's right across the street from City Hall, in front of I think it's the Pentecostal Church.
Yes.
It's my neighborhood. I grew up in that neighborhood. So
it's almost directly in front of the Pentecostal Church.
Yeah.
And I think across the street is the United Way.
Yes.
Right.
So it is kind of isolated to that area, or at least the worst parts are. So it just gives you an idea of where that section is.
There's been multiple cave-ins over there, and on the other picture, let me go back really quick. You can see there are a few right there, but even the ones that have been repaired, they're already failing again. It's just constant work for them. They said that they're out there all the time. I looked at the video today. They could like I said, they could barely get it in because what they're assuming is joint separation or either some sort of large crack that's allowing sediment to get in there. They could not get the camera past that, so I can't really see a whole lot, but the work will replace the manholes and the sewer main as well. So again, right now, it's reviewing the reports we have. I'll make a few more trips out to both roads just to make sure I know which ones I really need to focus on, watch the videos or read over the reports. And then from there, it's gonna be, I think we would need an outside engineer to design it because of the type of work we're looking at. But that's something for, I'll have to sit down and discuss that. My goal is to get these out, get everything ready, and hopefully have it back or have it out to bid in October. It'd be the end of October, but that's it.
Yeah, because that was gonna be one of my questions. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done out there, and I'm thinking staffing. I know we're understaffed, and when you say bidding it out, that means you're gonna hire another company to come and actually do the work, because I know with the staff here, we can't do that. This amount of work, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's, thank God for those videos, you get to see. I mean, we got a class on it a couple of meetings ago on how those things work. That saves a lot of manpower right there, just knowing
Yes.
where you're going, and if you can't get that video through there, could you imagine how bad it is?
Right.
Especially when they show those big machines, I said. So, again, bidding out and all that is what kind of answers my question on that.
And we do end up having to bid a lot of work out, especially this kind of work, because we are limited in what we can actually perform in-house. I will say we have great staff. It's not because of staff expertise, but it's equipment, making sure you have the right trench boxes, the heavy equipment needed in order to get, 10 or, when you say sewer line's 10 feet deep, it's 10 feet deep, but you're bedding it at 10 feet deep, which means you're excavating closer to 12 or 15. And then, to go 12 or 15 and to put what is that one, an 18-inch? I don't know what size Brookview is.
12 to, I believe it was 12 to 8, actually.
So a 12-inch pipe, so a foot diameter pipe, have room to work, tile the surfaces in. You're talking about a wide excavation. So it's not like we're just digging one straight trench straight down. And on top of that, we have insurance and OSHA requirements that we have to deal with. So the deepest, just for your general knowledge, the deepest the city really goes is about 5 feet. We have gone deeper in certain circumstances, but when we do that, a lot of times we have to go rent equipment to do it. So it's either planned way out, or it's literally because we can't get anybody else to do it right then. But those are kind of planned, extenuating circumstances. So, for a project like this, we would almost always look to bid it out. Now, that said, we do have projects that we do in-house. And I'm changing gears a little bit, but to give our utilities maintenance staff some recognition, they've been working all week along Cole Drive. And what we're doing there is we're getting ready to pave Cole Drive as part of our street paving program. And we came through and we examined the sewer main and made all the repairs that we needed to make there. But what we couldn't do is look up the services because there were no clean outs. So our utilities maintenance staff actually, instead of hiring a contractor, said, look, this is something that we can do in-house. It is, we have the right manpower, we have the right equipment, and we can knock it out fairly quickly. So they're the ones out there installing clean outs in the services so that we can come back and just inspect them and make sure that, or try to verify to the greatest extent possible, when we pave that, we're not gonna have failures that we didn't know about. So we do some things in-house, but when you're talking about this type of work, we have to bring somebody in.
That's one of my attentions is, it takes a lot of people to do that.
Yes.
It does. And we do have some really good contractors that we work with.
Those guys still gotta, have manpower available to reply to
Right.
emergencies.
Yeah, that's right.
That stuff doesn't stop.
So, and then the only other thing I think that I'd like to kind of come back and point out is Randa started her portion of the presentation saying that this was an ongoing program that we implemented. I think this is the first year.
Yes.
And what we're trying to do is plan ahead for, we recognize that we have areas of town that have aging infrastructure, and we know that we're going to have to deal with it. So instead of just waiting until it fails and deal with it, what we're trying to do is evaluate it and maybe, target specific areas such that, like I said, if we can line it, we can do it a whole lot cheaper than if we have to replace it. Well, maybe if we can identify infrastructure that can be lined to prevent failure, we can avoid replacing. And this does not replace Mr. Nichols not here, so I asked the question for him. This does not replace our inflow and infiltration project that we have, which is almost all lining. This is for the purposes of identifying failing infrastructure and, rehabbing failing infrastructure, not just eliminating water coming into our pipes, which a lot of times go hand in hand, but not always.
PM goes a long way.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you very
Any
much.
other questions?
Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, very informative.
I was gonna say you can do it. We don't have anything else planned for you tonight. Again, we figured that some of the business portions of the meeting might take a little bit longer, so we're leaving time for that. That said, you do have the WASAC report, the Water Sewer Advisory Committee report that we send you each month. What I will say is, you'll notice that we are still doing very well in our lagoon storage. We're averaging somewhere around 3 to 4 feet and have been, which is a whole lot better place to be than we were, in a year and a half to 2 years ago, where we were holding 10 to 11 feet of water. So we're doing very well there. You can see we have attached the planning and permitting update. I know that Mr. Dorn always pointed that out to you, so that is included. And then as always, our grease report is included. So if you have any questions on that, I'll be happy to answer those if I'm able. If not, that's all we have to report.
Looks like you guys are really busy in July with the main sewer inspections. That's a lot of footage.
It is. And a lot of that, stems from the paving work that we're getting ready to do. And just to kind of update you on that, when we're identifying streets to be paved, not only do we look at the road surface to say, is this something that needs to be paved? And if so, what's the treatment going to be? Is it going to be mill and pave, or, are we going to have to go in and do infrastructure work, or are we going to be able to do some patching, or maybe just some maintenance, crack sealing or something like that? So I know that Nick is working very heavily on our next round of paving. So I would assume, I didn't ask, but I would assume that a lot of that footage is probably related to Nick giving them the streets that we're looking at for paving. And a lot of times what happens is, Nick will submit, a list of 20 streets, and Lines Maintenance goes out and starts cammering those and pulling work orders and providing that information for Nick to review. And then a decision's made on, yes, we've got larger infrastructure work like Dewitt Street to where we can't move forward with that, or, there's some minor things there. Maybe we make one or two small repairs and we're good to go. And in some cases, we don't have to do anything. Those are far and few in between, but those do happen. So I would bet that there's been a lot of sewer main inspection related to the work that Nick's doing with the street paving. And one of the things that is not in here that we might want to consider putting in here because they're still with us, at least for the foreseeable future, is Metronet.
Yeah.
We are still out locating every day for Metronet, and we are. They have a lot of crews working. You know, their goal is to put fiber to the home for every home in Jacksonville that's interested. But we also have water and sewer and power and, you know, cable and other things that run in those same easements that they're using. So we run into, not only are we locating, but we are running into a lot of utility strikes where they hit either water services or sewer services, or our mains. And we've had some large breaks that they've caused, and we've had some minor ones. We do try to keep information out there for the general public to inform them. You know, Metronet's considered a utility. They have as much right to be there as Duke Power or Jones Onslow. So it's not about whether they can be there or not. It's just working with them to do it to the least disturbance possible. The city has very little regulation that we can enforce. And just in general, if they cause a water leak or sewer problem in an area, if in doubt, call us. You know, even if you think they did, you know, call us, we'll come investigate. And in some cases, what they've found is where the meter's closer to the street, they may hit a water line behind the meter, and unfortunately, that's a plumber responsibility that the homeowner has to work out for Metronet. But in most cases, it's either in the street or on the city side. And what we do is we go make the repair to ensure that it's made appropriately. And in doing so, we bill Metronet for our breaks. And to date, we're somewhere around $18,000 to $20,000 in reimbursable expense. So we do track everything that they do to our utilities, and we are seeking reimbursement for that.
Now, do they have their own locators? It's not the city doing all the locators, no way.
If it's water and sewer, we locate it.
You're doing all the locating for them?
Yes, sir.
Really?
Yes, and it's part of our agreement with 811. So if they call 811 and they say, we're gonna be in this area, as long as they've met the requirements of that 811 ticket, and they do have to go mark it. So a lot of times what you'll see, it looks a little bit odd, but it's probably the best way to do it. They're locating, you know, if we're locating for a water or sewer main break, we're only locating a box that's, 10 yards by 10 yards. So if you're driving down the street and you ever see one of our cones, and then there's a white spray paint box in the road, that box is where we're planning to make our repair. But if you look at Metronet, they're working more linear and they're going long distances. So when they call in a locate, they'll put a white mark on the ground, and then they'll just paint a really long line, sometimes 1,000 feet long, and then they'll put a white line at the end. And we have to locate everything along that white line that we have. So, and for the city, that's water, sewer for the water and sewer department. We don't generally have to locate storm drains or anything like that. Those are pretty evident, but we do have fiber optics in the city. So while we don't do it, transportation does. So they have to go out and locate any fiber optics that the city owns in an area. Now, typically those are related or generally along corridors, major corridors, but we do have that also. But we are locating all of the water and sewer lines, and our
That's the city
locator
employees
is busy.
doing this.
It is.
You're not contracting that out? Oh,
No, we
wow.
did price contracting it out, and it's so busy that we're actually using a program where we rotate 3 or 4 people through locating. And we do give them a little bit of a bonus for doing that. And some, they end up having to do it on weekends or, after hours or something like that. But what we did is we compared hiring a company to do that, because there are companies that do that. So we did look at hiring a company to locate water and sewer just for Metronet, and then we would handle all the other locates, because there's still other routine locates out there that have to be done. And in doing so, if I remember the cost analysis we put together, the city in the first 3 months would have saved over $100,000 doing it ourselves.
Wow.
So even paying a small little bit to rotate people through, or paying them overtime to do it, saves the city a ton of money. So our people are working hard on it.
Sounds like it. So you through?
I'm through. Unless you have anything else.
I'm done. I'm fast enough tonight. So, but thank you once again, everyone, for your presentations, and you really do have a great staff. I'll just go on the record and say that.
We do.
I've been here for 8,000 years, it seemed like, on the committee, and everyone's been great. So I want to thank each and every one of you for what y'all do for us and the public, informing us, and we do appreciate it. I know we have the open discussions, but I mean, we're not a quorum, but any of you guys have anything you want to bring up or say?
I think all the questions were answered from
Yeah.
Metro,
Yeah.
from the last meeting we had, that you explained it very well, and
Yeah,
it's good to follow up, because sometimes when they make holes and you're dodging, because you don't want to save your tires on your car
Yeah.
from hitting those,
That's right.
so, low wear and tear, so it's appreciated, everybody's got a grasp of that, okay, they're out there, and the city really has to work with them the best they can, so.
Great. You guys okay? Anything?
Sir.
All right, sir. Well, our next scheduled meeting will be Thursday, September the 8th, 5:30, right here. And hopefully we'll have enough for a quorum and
Do elections.
to get this guy elected in. So, not that I'm voting for anybody, I say. Okay, can I have a
Motion to adjourn?
second? Okay, we adjourned.
Turn.
Thank y'all again.
Thank you.